But first to an issue that is critically important to the future of this country, the education of our children and the dumbing down of a curriculum that is becoming more politicised every year. Scott Morrison, I shouldn't say Scotty Morrison, that's disrespectful, has finally begun warning the nation against the ills of identity politics. In a speech to United Israel Appeal last night, the PM said, "We must never surrender the truth, and the experience and value of every human being is unique and personal. You are more than your gender, your sexuality, your race, your ethnicity, your religion, your language group, your age." They're great words, but at the same time, we have the Scott Morrison government overseeing the national curriculum become even more corrupted by leftist ideology, often far leftist ideology that obsessed with identity politics. The review into the curriculum was ordered by the federal government, a supposedly conservative federal government, but you might as well have Adam Bandt in charge, given the output of the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, who yesterday released their revised framework. And to be frank, it's a dog's breakfast of intellectually vacuous virtue signalling and regressive, race-obsessed revisionism. Australia's declining performance on international student tests will continue if these latest changes are implemented. Australia was once a top 10 nation in maths, but we have now fallen to 29th place. And our students' reading and science scores have also plummeted despite spending on education increasing significantly. In reading, Australia was once ranked in the top 5. We're now in 16th place. So let's have a look at some of the changes proposed for the national curriculum. And well done to the Australia's Rebecca Urban, the education reporter there, and the Daily Telegraph's James Morrow for so thoroughly covering this important story. Now, to the curriculum. Primary school students will no longer study world navigators and explorers. Significant dates and sites, gone. And in Year 7 history, the Investigating the Ancient Past topic, which examined events across Egypt, Persia, Greece, Rome, India, China and Maya, will be replaced by Deep Time History of Australia, focusing on Indigenous history spanning back 60,000 years. Instead of learning about internationally significant commemorations such as Bastille Day in France or Independence Day in the US, the curriculum will focus on the teaching and the importance of National Sorry Day, and will examine British colonisation through the perspective of First Nations people. Children will be taught that Australia was invaded. The current curriculum says Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's family and kinship structures are strong and sophisticated. But the new framework goes much further. It says, and notice the change in the language, it's now First Nations Australians, have sophisticated political, economic and social organisation systems which include family and kinship structures, laws, traditions, customs, land tenure systems and protocols for strong governance and authority. This is Bruce Pascoe-style revisionism on steroids, and it'll create a generation of ignorant, historically illiterate, self-loathing Australians. It doesn't stop there. There are radical changes in just about every year level, much of it concerning Indigenous studies. As Australia's preeminent historian Geoffrey Blaney said about the curriculum, by all means teach Indigenous history, but not at the expense of classical and Western civilisations. Ancient Rome surely did at least as much as Uluru to shape the modern Australian way of thinking and living. The curriculum changes also see Year 1 students no longer being taught how to tell the time on an analogue clock. They'll be delayed until Year 2. And rote learning of times tables will also be pushed back a year from Grade 3 to Grade 4. Again, pathetic. We're just going to fall further and further behind. Already this year, we've had school kids being told that Australia Day is Invasion Day. We've had boys in multiple schools humiliated for being male, white and Christian. And we've seen standards fall while political activism in the classroom increases. It is imperative that Federal Education Minister Alan Tudge steps in and addresses this critically important issue. Paying lip service to the cause won't be enough. There needs to be meaningful change. The education of our children is too important to be further degraded by activists and cultural Marxists. If we want to improve our literacy, science and maths results, then we need to focus on facts, not feelings. And we need to focus on academic excellence, not far left social engineering. Stephen, I've got to say, what is the point of electing a Conservative if they're going to oversee this sort of leftist lunacy? I mean, we might as well just elect Labor or the Greens, because is that...
Well, certainly you'd want to elect the Greens to get that sort of outcome. I mean, the sort of things you've described. I mean, I for once am actually sympathetic for the first time in my life to what Jeffrey Blaney had to say. I mean, and his point, yeah, I'm sorry, but, you know, he makes the point, yes, teach some of those things, but just don't give up. So the question here is about the balance and getting the balance right. And given the sort of Marxist ideology that masquerades out of, you know, the teachers' unions around the country and sometimes the bureaucrats in the education departments around the country, you're right to be focused on this. But I don't quite get as excited about it as you, because the slide in our rankings has taken place before the Marxists have got control of this curriculum, as you would describe it.
Well, I would argue they've been slowly seizing control over several decades. I don't think this is a new phenomenon.
But the slide in maths and science is not, you can't put that down to the Marxist ideology that you're describing. So I think that there does need to be a focus on, you know, the reading and the writing and reading a clock and things like that. But
something as simple as that, why put that back?
It depends what they're putting in. I mean, it could be that they have to use the newer technologies.
I know, but it's just a basic skill. There are still analogue clocks around, and surely it's just something that is a useful skill that you can teach a grade 1. I would have thought you'd get that done in prep, but they want to put it back. And the rote learning of times tables, there seems to be this sneering attitude to any rote learning, but knowing your times tables, having that foundation is important.
I've spent, you know, evenings drilling my daughter on the times table. So I absolutely agree that these are important skills that they understand. I mean, you might argue that, you know, the iPhone has a calculator and you'll never actually do any maths in your life.
That was my argument. Well, I didn't have an iPhone, but I said, well, we've got calculators. Why do I need to do maths?
But you didn't carry a calculator around with you everywhere.
No.
Whereas you carry your iPhone with a calculator on it around everywhere.
But if you don't
when was the last time you got a pen and piece of paper out to split a bill at a restaurant? Come on.
Oh, no, I wouldn't. But just having the foundations, understanding percentages and fractions and the basic stuff can make life a lot easier.
I'm all for that understanding. I'm with you 100% on that.
There are a lot of people who are entering the workforce now who really struggle with that basic stuff, who do need to go to their phone to do the most simple subtraction.
And people should always have it. You know, your phone won't always be charged. You know, so you've got to have a situation where people can understand all of those fundamental principles. And I think, but Jeff Blaney makes the point. We've got to make sure we get that balance right. And so I think we need to see what's going to be replaced with, you know, and look at the overall priorities. But we should be alert to the Marxist ideology that lurks back there. Some of the identity politics stuff has run out of control. So I'm very sympathetic to some of your argument there. But I would say that the slip in standards has occurred before the argument about whether or not, you know, kids learned in grade 1 how to read an analogue clock.
That's it. Well, and this focus on, it's been called almost embracing a monoculture, where you're not teaching kids about Western civilization, important events in history, Roman, you know, that stuff is critical to how we live today. It's critical to understanding the world as it is today. And I'm not saying don't do Indigenous studies and focus on that as well, because that's part of our history. And even when I was at school, it was part of the curriculum. It was not ignored. It was not downplayed.
But unless we're going to have a 12-hour school day, something's got to come out to put those things in. And I agree with you. We've got to learn the history of Australia and learn it fully, even if there's some parts that, don't always make you proud of what's happened in the past. So something's going to come into the curriculum. Something's got to come out, and that's a good debate to have.
Yeah.
I mean, should I know off the top of my head, 1066, the Normans invaded the UK versus some important events, which I currently would say I don't always understand all of the issues in the Indigenous history of Australia. So there may have been, events that are significant in Australian Indigenous history that I should know, but that means there's going to be other things that I didn't learn along the way. So,
and I think we've got to have honesty in the teaching of this history. I had two fantastic, brave Indigenous women on the program on Credlin earlier in the week, Jacinta Price and Jacinta McAvoy-Gayer, and they were talking about what life is like in their communities, but they were also talking about the culture and some of the cultural implications of things that aren't discussed, that we shy away from, that have an impact on the lives of women and children today. And I feel like with a lot of the teaching of this, we are not being completely honest, and that is not helpful. If you're going to do this, then do it properly, do it accurately, and cover it all. There's no group in history who doesn't have shameful periods in their past.
Absolutely.
And you've got to cover it honestly.